take a motion to approve the previous meetings.
I'll make that motion.
Second it.
I'll second whatever.
Anybody opposed?
No.
It's unanimous. All right, we're going to jump this agenda down to number 4. Authorize the Albany County Sheriff to consider out of the county applicants for the position of full-time and part-time paramedics and full-time and part-time emergency medical technicians for the county's advanced life support and EMT program.
That's number 3, right?
Number,
Yeah, it's the sheriff.
Number 3.
Okay.
yeah, they got
just
my
wanna-
numbers backwards here.
Okay, just want to be clear.
The copy they gave me, that they got it down as number 4.
Okay,
But regardless, that's what it is.
gotcha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. This is my annual plea to go out of the county for paramedics and EMTs. We continue to fight hard to get qualified applicants for these positions. You know, it's no secret, most of it is monetarily for those reasons, but needless to say, we need to continue to go out of the county. I get usually a 12-month extension and I'm asking for another.
Any question for the sheriff? I'll take a
I'll
motion.
make a motion that we extend it for 1 more year.
Look for a second.
I'll second that.
Anybody opposed? So it's unanimous. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
You too, Sheriff.
Bye-bye.
Number 4, authorizing the Office of Immigration Assistance to consider out-of-county applicants for position of Immigration Counsel.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Evening.
Is it my turn to speak? I apologize.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Evelyn Kinna, and I'm the director of the Immigration Assistance Center. I'm also here today to respectfully request a residency waiver to pursue additional qualified candidates for the staff attorney position that we're looking to fill in the office.
Good night.
And go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Kinna, I assume that Immigration Counsel is very specialized. Do we really have a shortage? I know we don't have a shortage of attorneys in Albany County, but is there a real shortage of Immigration Counsel where we have to go out of county?
Yes, we've already done an internal canvass and we have not been able to find a candidate that meets the specific requirements. This position is grant funded, and as a result, there are minimum requirements that have to be met, one of which is a 3-year immigration experience minimum requirement. And we're also looking specifically for someone who has experience in the intersection of immigration law, family law, and criminal law. And so we have interviewed some candidates already. Most of them have some of the skills and requirements that we're looking for, but no one has everything that we're looking for. So to be able to expand outside of Albany County will give us a bigger candidate pool to be able to meet the requirements of the grant and fulfill the terms of the grant.
Do you think the issue is that there's lack of qualified individuals in Albany County, or is our salary too low, or are there other factors?
Well, the salary is currently commensurate with experience, and
Yes.
it's in the 80s,
Okay.
hopefully. So a salary is not the issue. We have interviewed candidates who have significant immigration experience and no family or criminal, or vice versa. So
Okay.
looking for somebody who understands or who has specific experience in the intersection, because that is what the grant work calls for.
Okay.
So we need to be able to find that qualified candidate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
How many people have you interviewed?
We've interviewed over 10 currently, and we have 1 or 2 scheduled for next week. And we're continuing to look.
And you think you dried up the system in Albany County? There's no more qualified people who apply?
I believe so. We've been looking since January, I believe, and we've interviewed the candidates that have applied. So we're hoping that we can expand our pool so we'll be able to fulfill the terms of the contract, which we recently were awarded for another 3-year term.
I would also like just to add one thing on the within the grants, the requirement. It's not just Albany County, but we are the Region 3, and we represent 14 counties in this, going all the way up to the Canadian border. So somebody in a different location may be able to help our office in a geographic sense.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, I have some concerns. How fully do we really believe in the residency requirement, I guess is my question. 'Cause- I'm sorry?
Yeah, okay.
I just think we're always, we're allowing for all these exceptions, and a lot of them are very legitimate, trying to get a healthcare worker at the nursing home for 28 grand. But if we can't find an attorney in Albany County, I think then when are we ever going to apply the county residency law if we're making exceptions for not being able to find an attorney in Albany County, which is, has got attorneys all over the place.
But we're not just looking for any attorney. We're looking for an attorney with a specific skill set. This position is an extremely specialized position that requires a specific skill set.
How many, I appreciate that, but how many Albany County residents have you interviewed?
Well, we've interviewed over 10 candidates currently.
How many
Those
from
are
Albany?
the applications that we
How many
received.
from Albany County?
They've
All
been,
from-
yeah, all of them were from
All
Albany
from
County.
Albany County.
All right, so that indicates to me that you were interested enough to interview them, that they had enough qualifications to be interviewed, right?
And we
Well,
also have
You're saying none of them can meet the standard?
we also have specifications which the grant requires that a minimum of 3 years of experience.
Yeah. And they have to have experience in criminal court and or family court. So as I explained earlier, some of them have some experience in something, but not everything that we're looking for.
Well, when you solicit these candidates, don't you put them stipulations out there?
Yes, it's in the job description that we put out. We even received applications from candidates who did not go to law school. So,
Yeah, but the ones you did receive from, they didn't meet them 2 criteria you mentioned?
It did not. They had some
Then
immigration
why
experience.
did they bother applying?
That's not a question for me.
Well, it should be a question for somebody. Why would they apply when they're not qualified?
Well, the job description specifically required someone who's admitted to practice in New York and in good standing, and at least 3 years or more of direct immigration experience, and a preference for somebody with criminal court experience and or family court experience, and who has a good grasp and experience in the intersection of those 3 areas of law, because it's a very specialized area that we're looking to provide services for to the court mandated attorneys in the 14 counties that we provide services for.
The chair can't see, so as the vice chair, Merton, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a motion that we approve the request.
Well, can I wait? I'm going to weigh in for a moment. As an attorney, the job description that you are describing, I can understand why you're having some difficulty finding someone to fill that position. You need someone with significant experience in multiple different areas of the law. And the way most people's careers develop, they tend to develop a specialty in one of those areas you know, not, and you're looking for someone with significant experience in like 3 different areas. I can understand why you're having difficulty finding that position, filling that position. So if it would help, and we don't even have any guarantee that if you broaden your scope outside of Albany County, you're going to find somebody that fits that criteria.
But we want the opportunity to do so.
Right. So I'll just tell you that I'm going to support your efforts to do so. You have a services that you're supposed to be delivering, and you want to find the most qualified, or at least a qualified person to do it. And I'll support your efforts in that respect.
And more importantly, it's a condition of our grant that we have. So we need to be able to have somebody who's qualified enough, who will be approved by ILS to do the work. So we have to meet the conditions of the grant.
Any more questions?
Mr. Chair, may I'm just looking at the backup. So this has been advertised through the ILS and the Regional Immigration Assistance Center. And the other thing is they work for 14 different counties, as Mr. Jana mentioned. So it is kind of a little bit different than our regular county employee. I have, you know, I'm a big stickler for the residency requirement. It sounds to me like this is pretty specialized, and I don't have any problem if we give a 1-year waiver to this one specific position. And if you're looking for a motion, I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
1 year, we're hiring this person for 3 years. Wasn't that mentioned?
That's correct, but we'll give them a 1-year waiver. In other words, they can hire this person within a year. If not, they have to come back to us. That's our normal procedure.
Thank you.
And every year he'd get a new waiver?
Well, no, they would have to come back to us for a waiver for this position if a year from now we still look every year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Every year.
Unless the chair would want to make it a 3-year.
No, we'll go with the year at a time.
We this committee always is going with a year at a time.
Understood.
Well, can I ask a question? Let's say you find somebody from some other county who's qualified and you want to hire them. If we only give you a 1-year waiver, does that compel that person to move to Albany County within a year?
They'll be made fully aware that this would be a condition of their employment.
That they have to move to Albany County within a year?
Within a year, and that we have the opportunity to come back to you to address the issue again, but they'll be made aware that this would be a condition.
Yeah.
That's a condition that we always put on.
Yeah. Upon each interview, we've always informed every candidate that this is a grant position. It does have a county residency requirement. And if we were granted this authorization, we could inform them that we would need to go and get authorization for an additional year if we were across that road when we get there.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Gil, it's Paul.
Okay, Paul.
I kind of fall in line with what Jeff said. Having an attorney with 3 specialties, criminal, family, and immigration, is a sort of a unique skill set. What are we paying somebody for these slots?
Well, it's going to be commensurate with experience, but we'll probably start in the 80s, mid 80s, going up.
Okay. And what is the top end of the range?
I believe it's 98 in our county line for that position.
So you believe that for that sum of money that you can find somebody with those 3 skill sets? That
We're very hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
We're very hopeful that that we can find a candidate who has expertise in the intersection, not necessarily expertise in those individual matters, but in the intersection of those matters. That's the key.
How many are you looking to hire?
It's one
Just
staff
one.
position.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I think it may also be a benefit to Albany County if we have somebody outside of the county, since we're managing 14 different counties, someone who would have the connections, be able to travel to those locations, might be more geographically placed in a better position to address issues as they arise and hit the ground running.
Now, these two people you got remained to interview, are they from out of the county?
They're local.
They're local? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, entertain a motion.
I made the motion, or I'll make it again if you'd like.
Yeah, please do. It didn't come across first time.
Thank you.
Got a second?
Second.
I second.
Anybody opposed? So it's unanimous. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, go back up to number 2, an act to modify the rules and regulation for Albany County employees.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is Frank.
Hi,
Yeah.
Frank. Is my understanding,
Frank.
Frank, you want to table this?
No, I'd like to speak on this if possible.
Oh, I thought you wanted to table it.
Well, that may be something the committee may want to do, but I think we need to discuss it before we do tabling.
Well, what I discussed? Did we talk to Human Resource Department and the other people involved like we were going to do?
We sent them letters asking for their input, and they haven't provided us with that input yet. So, at this point in time, I think we need to maybe have a quick discussion about this, and then at that point, if the committee wants to table it, they can.
All right, Frank, have your discussion.
Okay, all right, good, thank you. For your new legislators that are here, last year our outgoing controller conducted an audit on our time and attendance policies and procedures, and as well as employees working on campaigns and political work during county time. And he has some pretty serious allegations, but he never really completed the audit. And there was a lot of outcry out there from our constituents and from the public about what are we going to do about this. But to be honest with you, we just didn't have enough information to do anything with it at that point. Our incoming controller, Susan Rizzo, took the bull by the horns, and she completed the audit. And she submitted her report sometime in April of this year. So we looked at this as a few of us as a conference, and we were deciding, well, maybe it's time that we address the concerns that were in the controller's audit, because the outgoing controller really had allegations of not only misuse of our policies, but he felt people were doing this intentionally. So we took the recommendations that came from the current controller, from Susan's audit, and we put them into a resolution. And I think it's important to look at this because we took all the information from that, all the recommendations, and we put them in this resolution. Now, our intent here is to make this bipartisan. We wanted to reach out to everybody in the legislature. 6 days before the legislative exchange, we sent this to the chairman's office and the majority office, and we asked for their input. And then I was called at the 11th hour before the exchange, asking me to hold this. And no, I'm just afraid that if we hold this, it'll just take forever before we finally act on this. And I think our constituents and the public really wants us to act on this. So I told them that I'd be willing to hold it in committee, but this needed to be submitted and needed to be addressed. So that's why I did this. And also on the 15th of July, I sent a memo to Susan Rizzo and to Jennifer Clement. And my apologies to the chairman. I asked them to appear before this committee, and that's really not my place to do so. That's the chairman's place to invite them. So I apologize for that, but I asked them for their input. And today they both sent emails saying that they weren't able to appear, but the Jennifer Clement said she'd be willing to meet next week, and And Susan said that she'd be willing to work with us on this as well. So what I want to do is just want to make sure I'm reaching out to everybody in the legislature and letting everybody know that not only have we reached out to Susan and Jennifer, but as well as county executive, the county attorney, and the chairman of the Black Legislative Caucus. And I just feel that we need to act. The public is looking for us to act. We've done all of the basic work on this. All it really needs is fine tuning. So if everyone is willing to work on this together as a team, as a legislature, and I think we need to demonstrate to our constituents and the public that we as a legislature can work together and get this done. If the committee wants to table it, that's fine. But we really need to move forward with this as a body and show that we are addressing the concerns of our constituents.
This,
Agreed here.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff, you were up.
yeah, I really appreciate the efforts of the legislators to put this together. I agree that it's an issue that I've heard a lot from constituents about. People want us to do something about this. At our last meeting of the Personnel Committee, we had agreed that we would have Ms. Rizzo come in and perhaps present to us on, from her perspective, having completed the audit, what were the legislative fixes that we could implement to fix some of the problems. I still would like to have that discussion, and it seems like that everyone agrees that would be productive. So I think we can use this bill as a starting point, and maybe the bill will be perfectly fine as is. I've read it, and I think it's a good starting point. There's a few tweaks I would make to it, but I would like to get the input from at least from Ms. Rizzo and Ms. Clement on some of these things, to make sure that that we've got everything in there that needs to be in there to effectuate what it is we want to do. So I think we should be thoughtful about this, but I don't want this to be I don't want us to lose the momentum that has already been put into this, obviously, from the work that's been done. So I would suggest that we, at our next meeting, have this bill be circulated. Individual legislators have the ability to review it, to make any tweaks that they want, but then we also have the correct witnesses come in to weigh in on this, and then we can get this thing done.
Any more discussion on it?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a co-sponsor of the bill. What we learned from the previous controller and the present controller, that there are some real holes in our timesheet operations in the county, and we have an opportunity to fix those. Now, yes, I believe this is a starting point, and I also think there should be subsequent discussion, as Ms. Kuhn has indicated, on what else we can do. But there's some very basic points in here that I find it hard to believe that people in the legislature would disagree with. Number one, their agencies don't have written policies on timesheet and attendance. We don't have that. It's hard to believe, but we don't. And this calls, one of the recommendations is to have written policies. One of the other recommendations is no political activity on campaign time. Who doesn't agree with that? Also, the idea that a subordinate could sign a supervisor's timesheet, which of course is ridiculous because a subordinate can't be independent. Those are the simple common sense reforms we have in this bill. And I'm saying, who's against this? So I see no reason why we can't move this tonight and then build on the momentum and improve the timesheet operations even further.
Did we find anybody that was campaigning on the county time?
Well, that's in dispute. Let's keep that dispute.
How's it in dispute? Did we find anybody, or did we find anybody?
Well, there's a lawsuit over this, so I don't. The issue is whether or not we think that's appropriate. Yes, Mr. Chairman, do you believe that's appropriate? Do you believe that's appropriate to do political activity on county time? That's a simple yes or no answer.
No, I never did. No, I don't. Yes, I definitely disagree.
Then that should be in writing.
I'm only asking you, who'd you find out that did that?
My point is, this
That's
should
a
be in
that's a
writing,
simple-
so we don't
that's
have
a-
any,
Wait a minute,
there is no
that's a
lack of
simple
clarity on it.
question too. That's a simple question to you. Have you found anybody that campaigned on political time? Did you find anybody doing that? Or did anybody?
That's
Bill, there's
the
lot-
subject of a lawsuit, which I'm not even going to speak to. Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay, sure. All right, sure. All right.
I could recommend
So
that.
the question is, where do you stand? Yes or no? That's my question.
Where do I stand? I stand the same
On
way you do.
political
I'm
activity on
against it
county time.
like anybody else would be against it. You're not the only one against that.
Mr. Chairman?
Vast majority of legislators are.
Then let's
Mr.
put it in
Chairman?
writing.
Mr.
Go
Chairman?
ahead, Sean.
Uh,
Yes, go ahead.
No, this is Todd Drake. Just sort of listening here to
Okay,
the dialogue. Thank you. Just listening to the dialogue here. Nobody in this room, well, whatever, virtual room, did any sort of investigation. So I don't think anybody can really speak to what they found. And I think Legislator Grimm pointed out that there's a lawsuit going on, and I don't know that that's our purview to decide on. But I get your point, Gil.
I lost you, Todd.
He's here, Mr. Ethier. I don't know what happened.
Let's get
He's back.
Okay.
let's get the controller to come in and talk to us more about what policies that she thinks might be helpful based on, she spent a lot of time dealing with this data, much more than any of us. But I think that what we're looking at here, we could move forward because as Legislator Grimm points out, everybody can get behind these things. Whether they've happened or not, they're good policies to have. And I think in any organization, coming from a business perspective, there's always a time and attendance policy in writing. And in any organization, I've never heard of, and this doesn't make me the authority, I don't mean to be one, but I've never heard of an opportunity for, for example, one of my employees to go in and handle my payroll records without my consent or or frankly at all. There would be no authority. So, simple things like that. When it comes down to what's the public image of Albany County government, now and more than ever, when we're dealing with fiscal uncertainty and there's going to be a lot of questions about cost and a lot of questions about conduct and all that. I think it's a great opportunity right now to be in the forefront of this and follow up on this subject and say, hey, look, we've got our eye on what's going on here. You as a taxpayer should feel assured that we're doing something here. And I think it does send that message. So, while I see lots of value in bringing the controller in, and I would like to do that, I also think there's value in moving forward.
Well, can I ask,
Sean, you have a question, Sean?
Yes, but I don't mind Mr. Kuhn speaking first.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead,
what
Jeff.
what do you guys mean by moving forward before we, let me make it clear. I don't have any problem, I don't think, with any of the broad policy objectives in the legislation in terms of not having political activities on county time. I'm 100% in agreement with that. I have some tweaks that I would probably make to the language to make it abundantly clear what political activities are, but that's just a matter of trying to be as specific as possible. You also mentioned, Mark, the not having direct subordinates approve their direct supervisor's time. I agree with that. I think we should make it broader. I think indirect subordinates should not be able to approve their indirect supervisor's time either. So there's just some stuff like that. But if we are going to receive the input from the comptroller or from others on this, how do we, I don't understand what you mean by move it forward before we have that. I mean, don't we want to have that input, get this bill in the best shape it could be in, and then move it forward? I mean, it's nothing that's urgent that we need to have done in the next, few weeks. We can get this done in the next 2 or 3 months, can't we?
If I could respond to that, only because I was the last one speaking. All I was saying about moving forward was having that debate tonight and talking about those language changes rather than tabling it, if I could clarify. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I mind if I speak now?
Yeah, go ahead, Sean. You got the floor.
Thank you. I think we all agree that our personnel handbook needs to be looked at and tweaked from time to time, as do every personnel handbook in every employer. And I agree with a lot of what has been said here tonight. But if we truly want to make this nonpartisan or bipartisan, there's been, you're writing in the resolution allegations that have not been substantiated at all. And I don't believe that's bipartisan at all. The other issue is I think there's there's many other issues that need to be addressed. And that's why I believe that, a meeting with HR is very important if we're truly going to make some changes to this handbook that are substantial. But I do have no objection to much of what is being stated in the resolution. Mr. Kuhn correctly pointed out a few of those items that I don't have any objection to at all. But I still think there's some work to be done before we move this. I think we should table it, to be honest with you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just speak
Hey,
on
Sean.
one more time?
Are you making a motion, Sean?
I did make the
Sean,
motion to table it, but I don't mind
All
hearing
right.
from others.
Yeah, go ahead and talk.
I
had a question
all I wanted to say is,
Sean.
this isn't making any, and I just want to make this clear, there are no allegations being made in here. We just want to tighten up our policies, and where it notes that a county worker cannot do campaign work on county time, that's really just tightening up our policy. That's not accusing anybody of doing that.
Well, then will you agree to remove whereas clauses 3 and 4 to start? Because anybody can make an allegation, but was it substantiated?
That was my question originally.
Clauses 3 and 4.
Whereas clauses 3 and 4 on page 1.
You know what? Yes, I would take those off. That's fine.
Okay, and I believe there's, I mean, if the objective here is to make some changes to the handbook that are
I have a question
going
for when you're done.
to protect us as an employer in the public, so that the public believes in what we're doing here, then let's make this something, let's concentrate on the issue rather than allegations that haven't been substantiated. That's all I'm saying.
I understand.
Can I have the floor when you're done?
Yeah, Lynn, go ahead.
I fully support the ideas that are in here. I personally, if I was going to go about it, I would pass a legislation that says that this here handbook has to be reviewed every year by us.
I believe it does say that now, but it's a big effort to do every year. Believe me, I do them in Green Island.
Most of the nonprofits that I work for, there's a review process every year. Every year we get the changes. We find out, what was changed, whether it was one little tidbit here and there. But I think talking about these things out of context, I'd rather talk about them all at the same time. Like I'd like to look at the timesheet section in the current handbook and see what it says there and see how what we're adding to it is going to affect it. Like maybe the whole thing can go and we can go with this one sentence that you guys proposed. Maybe it wouldn't really work out that way, but looking at it separately to me doesn't make any sense. It's all related. And I would feel better talking to both the comptroller and to Jen and to getting the whole thing done at the same time. I'm fine with bipartisan. We all have to work on it. It's very important. I agree. It's very
Correct.
important. I want to get it right once and for all kind of thing. There's a couple of other things, like these 4 things are great. 5, actually, if you count the 5th one about the not working on politics during your work time. But there's a couple of other things that came up too that I think we could talk about also. And, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the time clock mechanism. I don't know anything about that program. I don't know if it's being used as capably as it could be. Is it something we could upgrade and we can get more of this kind of information about reporting, about location? There's the questions that I have that I don't feel completely comfortable making a full vote on this today. But you guys are gonna do what you're gonna do, so I just thought I'd throw that out there.
So we
Yeah,
got a motion. Any more discussion on this?
Yeah, I
Mr.
think so.
Chairman,
Well, I'm sorry, let me just make one quick point. My advocating for her not voting on tonight is because I think we might want to put even more teeth into this than we have in there right now. I mean, we might have a conversation with the comptroller and she says, hey, this is great, but I would also do X, Y, and Z to make this even more effective. And I just think it makes sense to wait to get that input before we move forward. I know that Pat Collins has something that he wants to say. So Pat, you want to proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. Today, the chairman and the majority leader introduced legislation to ask the comptroller and the commissioner of human resources to review our rules and regulations, to offer suggestions. I mean, whenever this body modifies them, it necessarily affects a lot of employees. And we have previously, I don't think it's justified, but previously received criticism that we tiptoe on the collective bargaining agreements. So having those two individuals look at this, our rules and regulations as a whole, before we make any major modifications to them, is probably the best track going forward. So that's why we did today introduce legislation. Many of you are unaware of it. That's why I asked to be able to speak on it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, who's this?
this is Mark
Oh,
Brim.
Lynn? Okay, Mark, go back.
Thank you. I just want to make a couple of points. We have gotten feedback from the current controller. She studied all of this stuff. That's one of the first things she did when she got in office. She had a very extensive review of our timesheet operation, and she made some very clear recommendations, and we adopted those recommendations. Those recommendations are in the controller's report. So we have the idea that we haven't brought the controller in is not correct. We have, although I like what Jeff is saying. You want to add more teeth into it, then I'm all for it there, my friend. But let's be clear, we studied the controller report very carefully and adopted many of the sound suggestions that she had.
I think I mentioned that we should have HR involved in it if we're doing a handbook review. So, and I still,
But HR,
I do have a motion. I do have a motion to
be...
table on the floor here.
Yes, also, is it possible, do we have the HR and the controller address our committee?
I think that would be great. Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. Why don't
Why
we
not?
put that in that during the tabling period, we have a meeting with them and have them discuss with the committee. And any other legislators who want to be present.
That's a real good idea.
Okay.
I'm all for it, Mr. Chairman. I'm the primary sponsor. I think it's a great idea. We'd love to have everybody's input. Again, this is to work together to do the right thing. This is not to be contentious. We just want to make sure we do this and do it correct. So I'll take your lead.
Okay, I think that's a good way of doing it, and we're showing good faith on all the way around. Let's have a
Absolutely.
meeting sometime, if you can, Pat or Dennis or Andrew, whoever wants to set the meeting up and with our committee and have them come in and address the whole thing with us. Is that okay with everybody?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that. Yeah, Gil, I think that's sensible. Thanks.
Very good.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Before we vote on Pat, I just want to make sure I understand, what is the relationship between this bill and the other bill that you referred to? Would they be sort of reconciled and harmonized in some way? I'm not quite understanding what.
I mean, we don't direct separately electeds to do most things. We request of them to look into problems that we have and ask for input. And that's what we're seeking to do. The other thing is when we do modify the rules and regulations, we don't want to change one thing and harm a different thing. I don't think looking at this that it's going to get that far in terms of what subject matter we're touching in Mr. Moriello's resolution, but it's a possibility and it's something that we would like input from. So by introducing that, it essentially would bring them in into the fold and ask them to actually study our rules and regulations to make sure that essentially it could be a complete overhaul, but it certainly would touch on this subject matter.
Yeah, Patrick, just to be clear though, your resolution introduced at noon today didn't call for any recommendations. It just said the HR and the controller should get together and review this and get back to us without any time frame. So, there were no additional recommendations added. So I want to make sure that we continue the momentum here if we're going to table it, that we're serious about the momentum and we can work in a bipartisan way and to make sure that, the people that are, the timesheet operation is working the best way it can.
Okay, any more discussion on this? We're all set, I think. Any more discussion?
I still have a
Can we
motion.
vote on that motion of the table? Yeah, can vote on it? We got a second? Second. Anybody opposed?
No.
So it's unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Motion
Make a
to
motion to
adjourn?
adjourn.
Second,
So moved.
aye.
Anybody opposed? So it's unanimous. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Stay safe.
You too. Thank you.